On this episode of the Whiskey Tornado, I teach you guys how to make one of my favorite meals. It's smoked bourbon beef Wellington. All right guys, before we start cooking our smoked bourbon beef Wellington, let me go through the ingredients real quick. It's actually not as many ingredients as you think. You're gonna obviously need a nice beef tenderloin. This is almost 2.5 pounds. So I'm gonna show you guys how to trim that in a minute. You're also going to need some puff pastry. These are the puff pastries that I use. I had 2 boxes of those, and we'll show you why a little bit later. You're gonna need an apple. You're gonna cut this up. I use a Honeycrisp apple, and we are gonna soak that apple in some bourbon. You can use any bourbon. I use Buffalo Trace. It's cheap, it's easy to come by, and it's really good even on its own. So good to cook with, good on its own. So I use Buffalo Trace for this, but you guys can go as crazy as you want. We are going to need mushrooms, and I use about 24 ounces. I do a mixture of Baby Bella and white mushrooms. So that is going to be our duxelle. I'm going to show you guys how to make a duxelle, and we're going to add those bourbon apples to it. It's going to be really nice. You're going to need some garlic. You're going to need some thyme. I would use fresh thyme. We're going to need some butter because you're going to put lots of butter in with those mushrooms to make your duxelle. You're going to need prosciutto. So this is the one I use, and I buy 3 packs of these because we're going to make a nice salty layer to put this beef tenderloin on, wrap it in that puff pastry, and the salt and the sweet and the bourbon and the earthiness of the mushrooms is all going to mix really, really well. I use a little bit of barbecue sauce. I'm show you where to put that in. But I like this boozy bacon barbecue sauce from what is this, Stonewall Kitchen. It is really good, and it's got some bourbon in it, so bonus. And the last ingredient you guys are going to need are just some eggs, because we're going to make a nice egg wash to put over the puff pastry. Once we put it on the smoker, when it comes off of there, it's going to look really, really nice. All right, I think that covers everything. Let's get to cooking. All right, guys, step 1 in making your smoked bourbon beef Wellington, we just got to slice an apple. I don't want to do these too thick because I want the bourbon to soak in. This is going to be put in our duxelle in the food processor. So we just need to put all these in a bowl. Take your favorite bourbon. I wouldn't use a really expensive bourbon on this because you're not going to be able to taste it. And we are just going to let those soak in the bourbon for about 10-15 minutes. You could do longer if you want, but I like to get this out of the way first while I make our duxelle. All right, on to step 2. That's making the duxelle. We have our apples soaking in bourbon. So next we're going to make a mushroom paste, which is what a duxelle is. It's spelled D-U-X-E-L-L-E, I think. But we're going to make a paste. Basically, it's going to create a barrier between the tenderloin and the puff pastry so that the puff pastry doesn't get too moist. And it's also going to provide that earthiness that's so good with beef tenderloin. As far as the duxelle goes, this is to taste. So you guys are going to have to experiment and play around with this. I've kind of mastered what I love and what works really well for my palate. But basically, it's just mushrooms, thyme, garlic, bourbon-soaked apples, and a lot of butter. We're gonna put the mushrooms, the thyme, and the apples in the food processor. We're gonna blend that up, and then we're gonna put that paste in a pan. We're gonna add a lot of butter. We're gonna heat it up. We're gonna get all the moisture out till it condenses down into a paste. At some point in there, I'm gonna throw some garlic. I don't wanna do the garlic too early because I don't want the garlic to burn and become really bitter. All right, so step 2, let's just start putting these mushrooms in the food processor. Pro tip on the duxelle, you can't make too much. If you have more than you need, put it in a Tupperware container, put it in the fridge. It goes really good with omelets. You can put that mushroom, garlic, thyme base in some omelets, and it's really good in the morning. All right guys, we've got our duxelle made here. So all we're gonna do is put it in a pan, and we're gonna cook all the water from the mushrooms and the bourbon out of there. I also have some butter here. We're gonna throw a lot of butter in, and we're just gonna cook all that down. It's gonna take a while. Then near the end we're gonna put some minced garlic, but I wait till the end so the garlic doesn't burn. And then remember, if you made too much of this, it's okay, you can add it to omelets. All right guys, so as you can see, the water's starting to come up. Doesn't look pretty, but it's gonna taste really good. Guys, this is starting to look a little pasty, so I'm gonna add some garlic, and you guys are just gonna have to do this to taste. So mix some garlic in there. And the reason we're doing our duxelle as the first step is because this needs to cool down. Okay guys, so this is, all the water's cooked out, starting to become nice and pasty. There's some chunks of mushrooms in here that the food processor didn't get, but that's okay, don't worry about that. We're gonna put that in a bowl and we're gonna let it cool, and we're gonna brown our beef tenderloin next. All right guys, now you know how to make duxelle. Let's trim this awesome beef tenderloin. We got our beef tenderloin here. We've got to trim it. The way they have it, we got this section right here. We're gonna cut off. We want to make this as uniform as possible. So this section right here is probably what we're gonna use. Beef tenderloins, if you don't know, most of you probably do. This is the filet. If you ever order filet mignon, so it's an expensive cut of meat. So this extra that I'm gonna cut off, we can actually use that, so don't throw that away. So we're just gonna cut that, and then you can use this in chili, stew, or you can just use it as a steak. So so now I just want to get all these edges off. I'm gonna remove some of this fat. I'm gonna cut about this much off of here. Now we got a nice tenderloin here. All right guys, before we put it on the grill, we're gonna salt and pepper this. Okay guys, it's real important that you don't overcook this, so we just want to lightly brown it on each side. So that's been on there just a couple of minutes, and that's good. We're going to let it rest now, make our prosciutto layer. All right, step 5 is doing our prosciutto blanket. You're gonna need some plastic wrap, and we're gonna make plastic wrap. We're gonna lay it out, make sure that it's wider than your tenderloin. We're gonna put prosciutto, a layer of prosciutto on that. I'll show you guys how to do that. Then we're gonna take our duxelle that's cooled, we're gonna put it on top of that. We're gonna place our tenderloin on it, wrap it up, and put it in the fridge for about 20 to 40 minutes. We're gonna separate these, which is probably the trickiest part in this whole recipe, is getting these separated. So you want to be really careful not to tear them. You're going to tear them a little bit, but you want to be really careful not to tear these. They're really thin. And because this is going to be the layer between your tenderloin and the puff pastry, and this is what's going to keep the moisture from seeking through to the pastry. So we're going to go like this. We're going to do enough layers so that I can set the beef tenderloin on there and wrap it up. So we're gonna just coat a tenderloin in some barbecue sauce I have here, and I have this bourbon molasses, which is really good. Just to add just a little bit of flavor to it. We're just gonna rub it on here. You want a thicker barbecue sauce for sure for this. You don't want a really thin barbecue sauce. All we gotta do is just scoop out your duxelle you made, which should be pretty pasty. This is still a little warm, that's why you want to do it so early in the process. And basically we're just going to mash this out. Again, you're just trying to create a barrier so that the moisture from the tenderloin doesn't go through. All right, there you go. We're just gonna take our beef tenderloin. We're gonna put it not quite to the middle, but close. And that fits on there just perfectly. Now we're gonna roll this up. I'm gonna show you how to do that. All right, guys, this is step 7, wrapping it, another tricky part that often intimidates people. So we're gonna pull this up and carefully, very carefully roll this. You want to like kind of make it tight. Keep rolling it, just like that. And then we're gonna roll. We're gonna tamp down the edges here, just like that. Same thing on this side. So we're just gonna get nice and tight. Then the magic happens here. So now we're gonna go backwards with this, and we're just gonna tighten it. We got a nice tenderloin. We're gonna let that sit up in the fridge, and then we're gonna wrap it in a puff pastry. After you get the tenderloin in the fridge to rest for 40 minutes, make sure you take out your puff pastries. These need about 40 minutes to thaw. So we're just gonna open them up here. And this is what they look like. And we're just gonna let them thaw out for about 40 minutes. We just want them a little soft so that we can roll our tenderloin in there. All right, guys, so the puff pastries have been out for about 40 minutes and they're thawed out. So now we've got to put them all together so we can wrap this tenderloin in there. So you need to kind of like figure out where you need to layer and where you need to cut. So that's what we're gonna do right now. It looks like I need about 1 full sheet and another square. And then we'll probably cut this one in half. I think that'll be enough to roll this up. So all you do with this is just overlap it just a little bit, and then we're gonna press it together. So I've got the puff pastry cut exactly like I want it, so I'm just gonna unwrap this, put it on there, and we're gonna roll it up the exact same way we did with the prosciutto. All right, guys, here we go. This is the hard part. We're gonna roll this over. Looks like I cut it pretty good. And we're gonna get all these edges together here before we really roll it up. Pinch it real good. Go on this side, fold them all in, pinch it real good. That is looking pretty awesome. So we've got it there. We're gonna stick this in the fridge for another 40 minutes, let it sit up. While we do that, we're gonna go turn on the smoker, get the smoker warmed up. All right, guys, warming up my pellet smoker here. We're gonna get it to about 300. Then we're gonna take the beef Wellington, put it on here till the internal temp reaches 120. So we pulled it out of the fridge. It looks fantastic. It's set up pretty good. Took about 40 minutes. Smoker's warmed up, it's ready to go. So now we just made your basic egg wash here, and we are just gonna coat this. Come out nice and pretty. We're gonna score it. And then I have some Malden smoked sea salt, which we're gonna put on it, which just makes it taste so good. So you take the back edge of your knife, and we are just gonna, don't have to go super far in there. All right, guys, that's it. We're just gonna put a thermometer in this, put it on the smoker for about 20 minutes, and then I'm gonna rotate it in the smoker about another 20 minutes, and it'll be perfect. Open up our smoker here. This is just gonna go in this bottom rack. All we're gonna do is put one thermometer right in the middle, and we're gonna wait till that hits 100, turn it around, and then wait till it hits 120 and we'll take it out. We are at our desired temp. So all we're gonna do is turn this around so that it cooks evenly. Oh yeah, this is really good. Now perfect. All right, leave that till it hits 120. Timer's beeping. That means we hit 120 degrees internal temperature. So we're gonna see how she looks. Oh yeah, looks fantastic. Flip it around here. Pull this out. Moment of truth for our smoked bourbon beef Wellington. Let's see how the inside of this is. We're gonna cut right down the center here. Hopefully it turns out good. Oh, we got that crunchy bottom. Perfect. Here we go. Looking for a little bit of red. Perfect. We're gonna take our bourbon molasses barbecue sauce, just a little bit, because this is kind of sacrilege to even do for beef Wellington. Then we're gonna cut a piece here, show you exactly how I plate this. The bottom's nice and crunchy. Scoop right under there. And we're just gonna lay that right on top.